Assalamualaikum everyone, sharing with you another topic about social beliefs and judgment. So last topic we were discussing about the self. So now we proceed to the social beliefs. So what about this belief? What is belief? A belief is a conviction in the truth of a proposition. Once again, it is a conviction in the truth of proposition. Beliefs are held without resource to proof or evidence. It is also a belief system is often dealt with the issues which cannot be explained by reason or logic, creation, the meaning of life, and afterlife. So this is the belief. So the very basic meaning is healed without recourse to proof or evidence. So naniwala ka lang even though without evidence. But this is more on the belief of oneself, because since this is our subject is social psychology. So a belief is also a mental attitude that some proposition is true. Then according to study, between 80 to 95% of what you think comes from the habits of thought called the attitudes. And those habits of thoughts come from your beliefs. And where do your beliefs come from? So yun yung sa beliefs mo, galing yan doon. Then your beliefs comes from your teachers, that can be who were your teachers. Kung may mga tinuturo sa noon, sino-sino yun sila ngayon? Kilala mo pa ba sila? Ano yung itinuturo nila ito hinggil sa paniniwala mo sa sarili mo? Then all the people you came in contact with their beliefs. So sa dami-dami nilang paniniwala, we are not talking here also about the belief in one's religion, but we are talking here about yourself. Kaya nga comes about the study between 80 to 95% of what you think comes from habits of thought, which is called the attitudes. Then why belief is important? The belief is important because a behavior is important, and your behavior depends on your beliefs. Everything you do can be traced back to beliefs you hold about the world. Everything from brushing your teeth to your career. So ito yung pananaw mo, ito yung belief mo. Okay? Kaya nga here we are not talking about your religion. We are talking about the attitude sa sarili mo, paniniwala mo sa sarili mo. Then belief also help determine your reactions to others' behavior. So that can be. Then this entire means that beliefs are not an entirely private matter. Even beliefs you try to keep to yourself may influence your actions enough to become a matter of legitimate concerns of others. So kaya nga talagang nakadepende talaga yan sa'yo. So ito yung tinatawag natin na belief. That's why it's also important. Kasi dito yan makikita natin yung sinasabi natin, your attitude. Then your belief shapes your values, impact your emotions, and motivate your behavior. At the core of your worldview is your belief system, which affects the way you see the world and how you relate to others in the world. And therefore, it is essential that you know what you believe and why you believe in it. So, ito yung kagandahan. Kung ano yung paniniwala mo, ano yung belief mo, maaaring galing sa teachers, mga magulang mo, o sa ibang tao. Pero, pananaw mo sarili, kaya nga talagang mahalaga ito. Sabi nga, therefore, it is essential that you know what you believe and why you believe in it. Okay? Then regarding your belief system, your belief system is actual set of precepts from which you live your daily life those which governs your thoughts, words, and actions. Without these precepts, you could not function. Then, in order to be successful in any endeavor, first you need to have the self-belief that you are going to make it happen. Kaya now, sa pag-aaral mo, at least may tiwala, naniniwala ka ngayon na kung ano yung plano mo, dapat gagawin mo ito. Ano yung plano sa sarili mo, ano yung paniwala sa sarili mo, mangyayari talaga ito. Then you have to believe in your ability to be and do what is necessary in order to achieve the success you need. So nasa sayo na yung paniwalang yon. Especially tiwala mo sa iyong sarili para ma-achieve, para makamtan mo ang dapat mong makamtan sa iyong buhay. Then there is a structure. Tingnan din. From the belief, may mga causes yan. Anong pananaw mo? Kailangan mo i-filter yon. Then pababayan sa ikot, yung structure. Then you have to creating feelings or your emotion. Then para makita yung resulta. So yun yung behavior na sinasabi natin. Then ano yung outcome? Mag-produce siya ng outcome. Then nag-reinforce yung outcome doon naman sa belief. So tingnan natin yon, especially the belief na sa sarili mo. The belief of yourself. Okay? So ito yung pinakaayaw nating mangyari. This is what you do not want. Okay? Especially yung lack of self-belief and feeling of failure. So you look at this drawing. Ito yung pinakaayaw nating mangyari sa ating buhay. The vicious cycle, tingnan mong ikot. Low self-esteem na hindi mangyari, pababa, anxiety, then withdrawal, then failure. So paikot-ikot yan. So yun yung pinakaayaw natin, especially pag wala kang belief sa iyong sarili. Yung lack of self-belief, feeling of failure. Pero ang pinakagusto natin ay ito. This is what you want, what we want. The highest or high self-esteem and self-belief. So yun yung dapat. A virtuous cycle. Kanina vicious cycle, ngayon the virtuous cycle. Na kaya natin, I can do it. So you have to have the high self-esteem. Then, of course, the motivation, alam mo, then ikot-ikot, the persistence, na gustuhin mo, ginugusto mo, na kaya mo. Kaya nga sabi, kung kaya nila, kaya ko rin. So, the achievement. So, yun yung pinakagusto natin. If we have high self-esteem and self-belief as an individual, especially you as a student. Tandaan talaga ninyo yan. Ulitin ko, ayaw natin yan. Okay, pag ganyan kasi yung the vicious cycles, yung cycle na yan, problema yan, low self-esteem. Kung meron man ganyan, dapat i-overcome yan. At ito yung dapat na I can, we can, I can do it, we can do it. Okay? So yung nag-discuss tayo about self, I think marami na kayong natutunan din nun. This is in relation yung sa self na topic natin. Okay? So look at the drawing. How we perceive or judge and explain our social worlds. Pag makita ninyo yan. Okay? And how, and what, and to what extent our expectations matter to be important. Kung siguro pag tingnan mo yan, uy, mga IPs, uy, ito yun sila, mga taga-bundok. Uy, wala ito silang pera. Lahat-lahat na. Kikita natin. Pero, ulitin ko ha, how we perceive or judge those people. Kaya nga, nakadepende lang din sa atin. Minsan, ay, kawawa sila. Ay, nabubuhay. Ay, masaya sila. So, nasa sa atin yon. Okay? That's explaining the social world. Okay? Dito sa atin, we have a lot of IPs. Diba? Yan, that's in the other countries. Sabi nga, how and to what extent our expectation matters and to be important. Okay? Then, perceiving our social worlds, we respond not to reality as it is, but to reality as we construe interpret and understand it. Like yung sinasabi ko itong sa drawing, nasa sa atin yan kung paano i-interpret yan. Paano natin i-judge sila. So nasa sa ating mga kamay yan. Kaya nga sinasabi dito, we respond not to reality as it is, but to reality as we construe, interpret, and understand it. So tayo, nasa sa atin yan. Then priming is an implicit memory effect in which exposure to one stimulus influences a response to another stimulus. So in psychology, diba, the stimulus-response relationship, and I think nadaanan na rin ninyo ito. Pag may nakikita yung isang yung the dog, yes, yung may experiment, si Thorndike may experiment, na palagi nakikita yung buto, then tumutulo yung laway every time makita. So that's more on the exposure, especially sa atin, exposure natin to the social world. Okay? Then, experiments show that priming one thought even without awareness can influence another thought or even an action. So, kaya nga, nasa sa atin our relationship to the others. Okay? To the world, of course. Example, according to the study in 1996 of John Barr and his colleague, they asked the people to complete a sentence containing the words such as old, wise, and retired. If you are old, you complete the sentence. If you are wise, if you are retired, wala ka na pulos, wala ka nang gamit. Then, shortly afterward, they observed these people walking more slowly to the elevator than did those not primed with aging-related words. Okay, so yun yung observation din nila sa experiment. Then, moreover, the slow walkers had no awareness of their walking speed or of having just viewed words that prime aging. So yan, kaya nga nagdepende talaga kung paano piniperceive yung the others to the social worlds. Then, often, our thinking and acting are subtle, faintly primed by unnoticed events. Moreover, all these effects occurred without participants' conscious awareness and of the scent of its influence. Then, Bards in 2006 also in his experiment have a counterparts in everyday life. Halimbawa, watching a scary movie alone at home can activate emotions that without realizing it. Biro mo yan, horror, manood ka, then cause us to interpret furnace noises as a possible intruder. Kaya minsan nanood ka, kung ikaw lang mag-isa sa bahay, naiwan. So, your emotions, iniisip mo, iba na. Dahil sa napanood mo. Okay? Then, depressed modes, a prime negative association. But people in a good mode, and suddenly, their past seems more wonderful, their future brighter. So, kung nasa good mode ang tao, kaya nga it's more on the disposition, nasa sa tao lang, in his relation to others, to the social worlds. Then, another, watching violence, primes people to interpret ambiguous action as shove or a word stance or aggressive. Kaya nga, ang hirap talaga pag violence panoorin mo, gera-gera, etc. Talagang ito din yung magiging pananaw mo. Hala, ganito palang mangyari. Kasi nanood kang ganon. Kaya nga, sabi kanina, yung dapat doon, maganda yung papanoorin. Then, student sickness. Take note on this. For many psychology students, reading about psychological disorders primes how they interpret their own anxieties and gloomy modes. Kaya nga minsan, itong psychology, yes, may malaking tulong ito sa ating pagkatao. Kaya nga, tingnan din natin yun once again, yung the belief system. Then reading about the disease symptoms, similar primes medical students to worry about their congestion, fever, or headaches. So kung yun, binabasa mo, pinapanood, binabasa, kaya nga, makakuha ka na, of course, ng mga lesson, but the emotions is there. Then, akala mo, sabi nga, to worry about congestion, fever, or headaches. Then, much of our social information processing is automatic. It is unintentional unintentional, out of sight, and happens without our conscious awareness. So parang dahil sa napanood mo, parang you become unconscious. Kaya nga unconsciousness. Okay? Without our conscious awareness. Then the belief perseverance. Belief perseverance is a tendency to cling to one's initial belief, even after receiving new information that contradicts or disconfirms the basis of that belief. So, dahil ito yung paniniwalaan ko, dapat ituloy ko ito. Kasi ito naman talaga nakuha ko. Kaya nga sabi, the belief perseverance. Okay? Then the first impression is the strongest belief. The belief perseverance persistence of one's initial conceptions as when the basis for one's belief is discredited, but an explanation of why the belief might be true survives. Then may class activity, example lang ito, two groups of the opposite assumptions. So kanya-kanyang pananaw yan, especially on the beliefs. So may example dito sa belief perseverance according to Lee Ross and Craig Anderson. And their colleagues planted a falsehood of people's mind and then tried to discredit it. And this research reveals that it is surprisingly difficult to demolish a falsehood once the person concurs, rises up the rationale for it. So yun bang maling turo, maling akala, pag na-inculcate na yan sa pag-iisip ng tao, hindi yan basta-basta matatanggal. Maaring ito yung isa sa mga belief perseverance. Kahit na mali, sinusunod. Kaya nga, you have to check itong falsehood na yan. Kaya nga, surprisingly difficult to demolish a falsehood. Kaya especially, kung ano yung belief mo sa sarili mo. Then nevertheless, the new belief survives about 75% intact, not damaged apparently because the participants still retain their invented explanation for the belief. So according to study, at least with this new belief, 75% nandoon pa rin, hindi nadadamage. Kasi nare-retain yung explanation, invented explanation of that belief. Then this phenomenon called also as belief perseverance. Okay? Then show that belief can grow their own legs and survive the discrediting of the evidence that inspired them. So, ituloy ko. Ito yung belief perseverance. Okay? Pero ulitin ko ha, pag false yun, ang hirap daw tanggalin. Pero kapag the new belief survives about 70%, intact yun, apparently because of retain also the invented explanation of that belief. So another example, according to Anderson, Lipper, and Ross, as the participants to decide whether individuals who take risks make good or bad fighters. One group considered the risk-prone person who was successful fighter, unconscious person who was unsuccessful. Then the other considered cases suggesting the opposite conclusion. Then number 3, after forming their theory, the risk-prone people make better or worse firefighters. Okay, alam natin kung anong firefighters. Itong the risk-prone person who was successful firefighter and the cautious person who was unsuccessful. Yun bang firefighters wala yung sunog, pero yung iba, yung cautious, ayaw ko kasi baka maano ako, madamay ako, mamatay ako dyan. So, mga cautious na mga tao. So, unsuccessful sila. Pero yung the risk-prone, yung ginusto mo, dahil that belief system in you. So, sabi yung people make better, or it can make also worse firefighters. Then, the participant wrote explanations for this. So, if you notice with the psychology, social psychology, maraming mga experiment, maraming mga study. Okay? Another example that the risk-prone people are brave, or that the cautious people have fewer incidents. Okay, yung mag-take the risk, brave sila. Pero yung cautious na mga tao, okay, nag-aalanganin, fewer incidents daw nangyari. Kasi alanganin mo na, ayaw nila. Pero Kung arisgado ka, well and good. Basta may tiwala ka sa sarili mo. Okay? At doon ka natututo. Okay? Once its explanation was formed, it could consist independently of the information that initially created the belief. Okay? Then when that information was discredited, the participants still held that self-generated explanation and therefore continue to believe that the race-prone people really do better or worse firefighters. Okay. Yun bang willing to take the risk? So, ulitin natin, according to study, the race-prone people really do make better or it can be a worse firefighter. Then the evidence of compelling or perceived convincing our beliefs and explanations powerfully affect how we mentally construct events. So, ibig sabihin, nasa sa atin lang talaga yon. And that's why, as a lesson, please have the self-belief, yung sinasabi natin. Okay? But, ang punto dito, wag din manatili doon sa mga mali ding tiwala. Pero sa experiment, yung mga race-prone people, brave daw sila, at saka maaring better sila, matagumpay sila. Or they can be worse. Okay? But it's up to you, nasa sa tao din daw yon. Okay? Kaya nga, how we mentally construct the events. Cautious ka ba? O race-prone ka ba? Is there a remedy of disbelief? Perseverance? There is an explain the another explanation or the opposite of this. The assumption about the world can make contradictory evidence seem supportive. Another example of Ross Lippers, assisted by Charles Lord in 1979, in asking two groups of students to evaluate the result of two supposedly new research studies. Half of the students favored capital punishment and half opposite, ayaw niyang capital punishment. Of the studies they evaluated, one confirmed and the other disconfirmed the students' beliefs about the deterrent effects or prevent the death penalty. Then the result of this experiment, both proponent and opponent of the capital punishment readily accepted evidence that confirmed their belief, but were sharply critical of disconforming evidences, showing that two sides are identical body of mixed evidences, had not listened their disagreement about but increase it. So, kita nyo itong study, dalawang study, yung isa gusto ng death penalty, yung isa ayaw. Then both have evidences. Then it's up to you to have the belief. In the Philippines, you have also an issue about this, about death penalty. Ibalik death penalty kasi maraming addict, maraming rapists, maraming mga criminals. Pero on the other side, mayroon nagsasabi, no, you don't have the right because hindi ka God. God has only the right na kitilin yung buhay mo. So kita niyo yung the opposite experiment of disbelief perseverance. So it's up to us. Kaya nga patatagin itong tinatawag ng self-belief. Okay? Then, constructing memories of ourselves and our worlds. Another experiment, 2,000 people of Elizabeth Loftus in 2003 to 2007, and her collaborators have explored our mind's tendency to construct memories. In the typical experiment, people witness an event, receive misleading information about it or not, and then take a memory test. Then the repeated finding of misinformation effect. People incorporate the misinformation into their memories. They recall a yield signs as a stop sign, hammers as screwdrivers, vague magazine. This is in the other countries, and Moisel, Dr. Henderson as Dr. Davidson, the breakfast cereal as eggs, and the clean-shaven man as the fellow with a mustache. Then this process affects our recall of social as well as the physical events. So this is more on the study, more especially by Elizabeth Loftus in 2003. to 2007. Then, in reconstructing the past attitudes, 5 years ago, ito, may tanong. How did you feel about the nuclear power? If you'll be asked on this. But wala mo tayong nuclear power, so we cannot answer this one. Pero mayroon nga, i-revive na yun noon. Pero hindi tayo familiar siguro dyan. But you know what is a nuclear. Alam natin, very destructive yan. Then about your country's president or prime minister. So 5 years ago, how did you feel about the president? Sino yun during that 5 years ago? Irap? Gloria? Or si Ramos? Hindi pa kayo pinanganak? So anong perception, anong feeling mo sa kanila? 5 years ago, anong pananaw mo sa iyong parents? Mas lalo ba silang magalitin? Mas lalo ba silang bumabait? Then, if your attitudes have changed, what do you think is the extent of that change? So, 5 years ago, kung nagbago yung pag-ugali mo, yung attitude mo, or even the belief mo, ano yung extent sa pagbabago? Especially yung nanatili yung falsehood, cautious ka ba? Race-prone person ka ba? So, alin ka doon? Anong nagbago? Okay? So, ikaw lang makakasagot niyan. So, that's reconstructing your past attitude then. People whose attitudes have changed often insist that they have always felt much as they now feel. Okay? So, siguro 5 years, dami-dami ng alam, dami-daming realization na. Kaya nga ako as your teacher, pagtanungin ako, 5 years ago, kumusta ang parents ko? Kumusta ang president? So, iba-iba yung pananaw natin. Okay? Then, another example dito, a question concerning students' control over is a over the university curriculum. A week later, students agreed to write an essay opposing student control. After doing so, their attitude shifted towards greater opposition to student control. Okay, like itong study, yung experimental kasi may control group, then may experimental group. So, dalawang estudyante daw pinag-aralan. Itong control group, ito yung dapat gawin ninyo. Ito yung experiment group, ito din yung dapat. Pero sinasabi na, after doing so, their attitude shifted towards greater opposition to student control. Kasi yan, kinokontrol kasi yan. Kami ang dapat. So, yon. Ito yung mga opposition now. Then, it is not really totally unaware of how we used to feel just then when memories are hazy, current feelings guide our recall. Another example, when widows and widowers try to recall the grief they felt on their spouse's death 5 years ago, their current emotional state colors their memories. So, kung ito naman yung experiment, namatay 5 years ago, ang asawa mo, okay, anong paningin mo in the current state colors their memories, okay? So, maalala mo siya, tatandaan mo siya, namimiss mo siya. Then, when patients recall the previous day's headaches, pain, their current feelings influence, sway the recollection. So, that's another study. Then, parents every generation bemoan the values of the next generation, partly because they misrecall their youthful values as being closer to their current values. Then another study, the teens of every generation recall their parents as deepening on their current mode and wonderful or woeful. So ito yung mga study in reconstructing the past attitude. So another example from Michelle Ross and Kathy McFarland and Garth Fletcher. Okay, with their study, then later the students recalled brushing their teeth more often during the preceding 2 weeks than did the student who had not heard the message. Okay, so more about brushing. Okay, ang nagtoothbrush, hindi nagtoothbrush. Then what about judging our social world? Tingnan nyo. If you'll be asked, yung lola na yan, how would you judge this lola? Si lola magaling. Si lola ulian na. Si lola gumaganda. Si lola nasa bahay na lang. So, nagdepende. Judging the social world. Nasa sa atin na talaga yon. Okay? Si lola nasa house of the aged na. Si lola worker pa sila. So, nagdepende talaga yan. Kaya nga, kung depende din yun sa ating self-belief. Or si lola nag-aalaga ng mga apo niya. Or si lola siya pa yung cashier. Okay? Then how well do we make intuitive social judgment? What about this intuitive social judgment? Automatic intuitive thinking can make us smart. According to JoArs and Tanya Chartland, explain most of the person's everyday life is determined not only by their conscious intentions but the deliberate choices, but by mental processes that are put into motion by features of the environment and that operate outside the conscious awareness and guidance. An example of this, itong intuitive judgment. When the light turns red, we react and hit the brake and before consciously deciding to do so. So this is more on the traffic light. Okay? Pasalamat tayo, mayroon na tayo sa Cotabato rin. Kung red, dapat mag-brake ka. Kasi dangerous yun kung ituloy-tuloy mo. Then our thinking is partly controlled. Okay? Reflective, deliberate, and conscious. And more than psychologists once suppose, partly automatic, impulsive, effortless, or without our awareness. So, intuitive, automatic na, mag-judge. Kita red, talagang brake agad if I am the driver. Okay? Kita mong green, may tao doon naglalakad, dapat lakad ka rin. Kita mo yung parang intuitive judgment. Nasa isip mo na. Pag pula yan, stop. Pag green yan, go. Okay? Then, automatic intuitive thinking occurs out of sight where reasons does not go. Then consider this automatic thinking. The schemas, take note what is schemas, are mental concepts or templates that intuitively guide our perception and interpretations. So that's schema. Okay, then what about emotional reactions? Are often nearly immediate, happening before there is time to deliberate thinking. So an example of this, our ancestors so intuitively feared a sound, were usually fearing nothing. Hala, pag man narinig na siren, pag may narinig na putukan. So, sinasabi, deferred the sound, you will usually deferred nothing. But when the sound was made by the dangerous predator, and they became more likely to survive to pass their genes down to us. So, yan. So, kung totoo pala talaga yon. Then, given sufficient expertise, people may intuitively know the answer of the problem. So, yung the power of the intuition, yung pag-iisip mo. Okay? Then, without knowing how, we recognize friend's voice after the first spoken word of a phone conversation. So, I think, halimbawa, nakalimutan mo yung, hindi mo na-save yung sa phone book mo. Then, may tumawag. Then, alam mo, friend mo yon, you automatically recognize the voice. As a friend ko ito I think na-experience nyo yan. Itong without knowing how. Pero, with this word in the phone conversation, narinig mo lang siya, nakikilala mo na siya. Faced with a decision but lacking the expertise to make an informed judgment, our unconscious thinking may guide us towards a satisfying choice. Yun din yan. Once again, faced with a decision but lacking the expertise to make an informed judgment, our unconscious thinking may guide us toward a satisfying choice. Then, so far, we have seen that our cognitive system processes a vast amount of information efficiently and automatically. As we interpret our experiences and memories, our automatic intuition sometimes err. So, yung may mga automatic yung intuition natin, intuitive power natin, may mga time din na mali. Pero may mga time din na tama din. Then we are unaware of our faults. The intellectual conceit, evident in judgment of the past knowledge I know it all along. Alam ko na yun. Alam ko na ito. Then, extends to estimates of current knowledge and prediction of the future behavior. We know we have messed up in the past. Then, to overcome this phenomenon, overcome confidence phenomenon, the tendency to be more confident than correct to estimate the accuracy of one's belief, to find out whether the confidence extend to social judgment, according to David Dunning and his associate in 1990, create a little game show. So, ito yung game show, but I'll not read this one kasi this is more on also of the experiment. So, ang dabay naming experiment to overconfidence the phenomenon. What about this confirmation bias? People tend not to seek information that might disprove what they believe. Once again, people also think not to seek information that might disprove what they believe. Hindi na lang ako magtatanong, baka ang sasabihin niya salungat sa akin, pero ito yung pinaniniwalaan ko. Kaya nga, yun yung minsan iniisip natin. Ito yung tinatawag na confirmation bias. We are eager to verify our beliefs, but less inclined to seek evidence. Ayun ang sabi natin. Eager to verify our beliefs, but less inclined to seek evidence that might disprove them, or a phenomenon called confirmation bias. Alam natin what is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias also helps explain why our self-image are so remarkably stable. So may magaganda din na idudulot itong confirmation bias na ito. Especially why our self-image are so remarkably stable. Another example from Swan and Reed in 1981 about this, liken this self-verification to how someone with domineering self-image might behave at a party. Okay, ito, tingnan natin with this experiment, with this sample. Upon arriving, kung pumunta ka sa party, a person seeks those guests whom she knows will acknowledge her dominance. Di ba, ganan din tayo? Kilala ko ya ito, sino kayong kilala ko doon, o maghanap ka ng kakilala mo. Then in a conversation, she or he thinks, then presents her or his views in the ways that elicit a respect she expect. Then yung tinatawag nating table talk, pag magsalita ka, ganito ganyan, then magsasabat naman yung, especially pag hindi mo kakikilala. Okay? Then after the party, itong confirmation na example she's troubled recalling the conversation in which her influence was minimal. Ayun. Ang ganda-ganda naman yung topic inopen ko, pero hindi man nila alam. Wala silang response doon. Parang minimal lang. Siguro wala talaga silang alam. Ayun yung mga after the party. Yung pagkain natin, kala ko party, pero pansit lang pala. Yun, right after the party. Yun yung pinag-usapan ninyo. Then the more easily recalls her persuasiveness in the conversion that she dominated. Ayun, after the party, ako mo talaga nagsalita, ako talaga yung ayan, may mga ganon din ng mga tao. So yun yung na-remember, recalls his or her persuasiveness in the conversation, in the table talk. Okay? By the way, table talk yung tawag din in the table kung nag-join ka ng party, iba-ibang mga tao makasalamuha mo. Then, thus, her experience at the party confirms her self-image. So, yun. At ganon tayo. Ako personally, noon, talking about self-image, ang baba-baba tingin ko sa sarili ko. Low self-esteem, low self-image. But I was able to overcome it. Of course, with that training. Because of the training, mga seminars at doon na de-develop. So, kailangan overcome yun. Okay? Kaya nga, experience at the party confirm his or her self-image. Pero pag nandoon ka lang, wala kang sinasabi, wala kang salita, wala din yung confirmation bias. Ngiti-ngiti ka lang. Okay? Anong masabi mo after the party? Upon arriving and after the party, wala kang masasabi. So, ibig sabihin, low self-esteem ka, low self-image ka. But kung pinakita mo pagkatao, especially yung belief mo, the belief system, the belief of yourself, yun, maganda din yun kasi may masabi ka. Then you restrict the mental shortcuts. Okay? A thinking strategy that enables quick, efficient judgment with valuable little times to process so much information. Our cognitive system is fast and frugal, so more on mental in the mind. It specializes in mental shortcuts. We form impressions, make judgment, and invent explanation. Heuristics enables us to live and make routine decisions with minimal effort. There are two types, the representative and availability. Yung heuristic from the mind, the shortcut of the mind. So ito yung mga example. When we say the first representative type of heuristic, the definition is not judgment of whether someone or something fits a category. An example of this, doing that Carlos is a librarian rather than tracker because he better represent one's image of a librarian. Yun, representative, makita mo yung tao, ikaw na nagde-judge. Kala ko librarian pero driver, o kala ko driver pero parang librarian, says more on the librarian. Then, but may lead to discounting unimportant information. So, represent, nakita mo, pero ba ikaw na nag-judge, more on truck driver or the librarian? But sinasabi dito, may lead to discounting other important information. O baka hindi yon, dapat gusto mong alamin. Then availability, that's the second types of heuristic. Quick judgment of livelihood of events. How valuable in memory. Example, estimating teen violence after school shootings. It will lead to overweighing the vivid instances. Thus, for example, fearing wrong things. Kaya nga, quick judgment. Halimbawa, yung may nangyari, may barilan sa gaytong school during the election. May mga kabataan na sali. Pero it may lead to, baka mali pala yun. Fearing wrong things. Hindi naman pala sila kasali. Ito lang mga nag-aaway. Magkabilang party. Pero nadamay lang. Mga tipong ganon. Okay? So that's the two types of the so-called heuristic. The representative as well as the availability. Then we have illusionary thinking. Illusion lamang yan. You look at the drawing. Akala mo wolf, akala mo aso, pero the shadow pala sa kamay. Yung isa naman, akala mo yung battle, pero nag-shadow, nagiging itim. Kita natin? So, that's the illusionary correlation. Perception of a relationship where none exists, or the perception of a stronger relationship than actually exists. So, you look at that drawing. The shadow. People easily misperceive random events as confirming their beliefs. Totoo ba talaga yan? Or aso ba talaga yan? Or shadow lang? Then, if we believe a correlation exists, we are more likely to notice and recall confirming instances. In example, if we believe that overweight women are happier, we perceive that we have witnessed such correlation even when we have not. Diba? Study pa rin correlation, the relationship. Taba, happy kaya siya? Or hindi siya happy? We perceive that we witness such correlation even siguro insecure na talaga ito siya kasi sobrang taba, so hindi na siya happy, mas lalo siyang pumapangit, ganito, ganyan. So sabi nga, we perceive that we have witnessed such correlation even when we have not. Kasi nakita mo lang na taba siya. Then we have the illusion control, the perception of uncontrollable events as subjects to one's control or as more controllable than they are. Example, compared with those given unassigned lottery numbers, people who choose their own number demanded 4 times as much money when asked if they would sell their tickets. Dice players may throw softly for low numbers and hard for high numbers. Then gamblers attribute wins to their skill and foresight. So, nagdepende yan, the illusionary control or the illusion of control. Nasa sayo na. Kaya ito mga example, yung betting, tumataya. Okay? Example dyan. Then, lastly, what you believe. Take note on this. What you believe affects you and everyone in your lives. Always have high self-confidence in your own self. Believe in yourself, your capacities, your potentials. Once again, take note on this. What you believe affects you and everyone in your lives. Always have high self-confidence in your own self. Believe in yourself, your capacity, your potentials. Because you were born champion. So God bless everyone. Thank you and sukran. Dalaygon ang Diyos.